returns to the show today. He is a former congressman and currently host of The Liberty Report. He ran for president 3 times, once in 2012, 2008, and 1998. We'll be discussing his outlook for the economy and whether or not Ron Paul is joining the Department of Government Efficiency that is to be run by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. What Ron Paul would do to fix the current problems of the U.S. government and the biggest problems facing the American population today, and how the government should go about addressing the astronomical debt problem that they are facing now and into the future. And of course, we'll be talking about Donald Trump's trade policies and how that can affect the economy and the average person. This episode is brought to you by Exter, a fantastic company with interesting products, very interesting wallets. We'll talk about that later in just a bit. Dr. Paul, thank you for joining the show once again. An honor to host you. Thank you for coming back.
David, it's great to be with you again.
I want to start by talking about this post that we saw on Twitter not too long ago. Elon Musk tweeted, "Would be great to have Ron Paul as part of the Department of Government Efficiency DOGE." You replied, "I'd be happy to talk with you about it, Elon." Any updates you can share with us since then? Are you joining the Department of Government Efficiency?
No, I mean, it's a loose arrangement. I'm not a member, but we are on friendly terms, and they're very interested in my thinking. And they've been, as I post some of these, they will respond. So there's a working arrangement, but I have no official position. And I am comfortable with that because I wasn't really looking for an official position.
You're not looking to go back into government anytime soon, Dr. Paul?
I don't think I will be going. I like being a little bit remote from going back and forth to Washington.
Okay.
That got old after a while. But I've learned something since Elon has been involved. With X. Because over the years, many years of trying to get a message out, and mine mainly has been an educational message about free market economics and sound monetary policy that we're getting now. So if Elon, repost what I say, is unreal for me to understand how we can reach so many people. So it's something that I never saw it, but I'm delighted with it because I'm delighted that people are responding sympathetically with the program and the beliefs of limited government and balanced budget. But I also know we have a long way to go.
Well, what is the core message you want to reach or disseminate to Americans or people worldwide through X or any other social media platform that you mentioned?
I try to wake people up. Because government is too big, they spend too much money, the deficits are out of control. But I always go back to the Federal Reserve, as you well know, because I think whether you're in a category you think we fight too many wars and the DOD wastes too much money, or whether it's the welfare state at home, and on, and everybody talks about the $36 trillion deficit. So, but I don't believe that would be a problem if we didn't have a Federal Reserve, because that is the engine of inflation. That is the engine that nothing would be excesses, because if you couldn't just depend on the printing of money, so the politicians want to service their constituents and be reelected, no matter what they say about the deficit, they don't want to give up any spending that might keep them in office. So that we do that, we hear that, but the spending continues. But the reason why they are encouraged, either the people or the politicians who spend, is we don't have to worry about it. We'll just declare an emergency. Oh, there's a hurricane, so we need $10 more billion.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an invasion of Syria. We better spend more money. That sort of thing. But the Fed always comes to the rescue. They diminish the value of money. There's devaluation of money, and that's why the people suffer.
Being more involved with the Federal Reserve directly as president, let's put it that way. Take a listen to what Jerome Powell had to say in response to this. He made a remark about this recently at a New York Times summit.
Which is, you have talked a lot about the importance of the independence of the Federal Reserve. This is a group of people that I know that you are highly committed to. And there are now genuine questions, because the president-elect has been quite outspoken about it, just publicly, about the idea that maybe the Federal Reserve should come under more control and have the White House should have more influence over it. What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I think that what is the case for the Fed being independent? What does independent mean? It basically means that we can make our decisions without them being reversed other than by Congress, which created it. We're a creature of Congress. We're not in the Constitution. We're a creature of statute. So that's what independent means. And that gives us the ability to make these decisions for the benefit of all Americans at all times, not for any particular political party or political outcome. We're supposed to achieve maximum employment and price stability for the benefit of all Americans and keep it out of politics completely. I think there's very, very broad support for that set of ideas in Congress, in both political parties, on both sides of the Hill.
Broad support for the idea of independence. How do you respond to what he just said, and how do you respond overall to the idea that the president should be perhaps a sitting member of the Federal Reserve?
Well, they've been saying that since 1913, and we've had a few ups and downs. So it's the same old story. And independence sounds very good. How could you have 435 people in Congress dictating interest rates? Well, that's silly. But I don't think, a Federal Reserve Board working in secrecy had the vaguest notion what interest rates should be. That to me is a joke. But they do it on, and they tinker around. Now today we hear, we're going to lower the interest rates by 0.25. What is that? There's no inflation or whatever. But I'll tell you what, I love that clip you have on that because it says so much. Independence. They've used that as an excuse because I've been interested in auditing the Fed. I want to know what the Fed is doing. It has to be independent. And they said, well, look, the Congress, you can't let those people set the interest rate. And they're right. The Congress can't vote and decide what the interest rate should be. The market should do that. And the market still does that no matter what they say. But I tell you why they use that. If they would substitute the word secrecy in place of independence, they want secrecy. So there were certain things when I would push the auditing issue, they really, really clung to secrecy when it came to international operation. When there was an international financial crisis, who knows what's going on there? So people should quit thinking of independence. It sounds good. It doesn't work. What they should think of, all they want is more secrecy.
Okay, so Dr. Ball, you have pushed for the auditing of the Federal Reserve for quite some time. What would you like to know from this audit?
I would like to know what the procedures are, who benefits and why do they do it? What is the motivation? What are these discussions? And they say, well, there's a war going on in the Middle East. If we don't do this, our allies are going to be hurt. So, they probably talk very much about subsidizing the people that have control and have a lot to say about who actually is the members of the Federal Reserve. So but the thing of it is, I would never be satisfied because I don't think they should exist. The founders didn't want it. There's no authority for it, and they've rejected it in our early history. And now, it has created the biggest bubble of all history, and that is the $36 trillion of deficit. And everybody loves America, and they keep spending and borrowing. We keep printing money, but I do believe there's a bubble there, a huge bubble, and I do believe it always has to be dealt with. And there will be liquidation of the debt. And I believe there'll be liquidation of the mistakes made when they get the information from the interest rates, because interest rates tells business people, investors, people who buy and sell what to do. So they ruin it. It's a wage and price. Everybody, well, not everybody, but people think wage and price control, that's not good. Well, the price control of money is not good either. And that is the big problem.
So what do you mean by liquidation of debt? Well, what should be the appropriate monetary policy in the next 1 to 2 years?
It's pretty tough after all these years of messing it up, but you should get rid of it. And there's no easy move because the liquidation is coming. And they say, well, if you do that, if you curtail the amount of government debt, the Fed can buy of government debt, that's going to cause havoc. And I would say, I agree with that. But what if you don't do anything and you end up with a Venezuela when the people decide, I don't want to do this anymore? And there are dire predictions. How about gold, going one time at $20 an ounce and now a couple $1,000? $2,000, and people are predicting it's going to go up another couple thousand next year. So that is liquidation of the value of the dollar, and we bail out the whole world. And I believe the economic law will limit that.
What happens to the interest rate or markets overall when this liquidation happens, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think interest rates would go up. I think interest rates would go up and prices would go up, and that would be part of the liquidation. Now, the Fed, they hope that they can reduce systematically and slowly real debt, and they can. If you have an inflation rate of 10%, real debt, goes down 10%. But there's a limit to that, because one statement I had made that made it onto the internet was we're in trouble now because we have $36 trillion of debt, and it's automatic. It's out of control. This committee can't stop the interest payment. The interest payments are going up, and they don't have to appropriate that. That's automatic, and that's going to get worse because it's a pyramid scheme. In a way, it's a Ponzi scheme because it's automatic, and it keeps building and building, and you don't have to appropriate the money. But if you mess around with it, there's a lot of pain and suffering. But if you move in a direction of weaning ourselves off, the pain and suffering will come. But if you don't do anything, there will be big pain and suffering because, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, those monetary systems, they don't end gracefully, ever.
So what is the ultimate worst case scenario here? If we don't fix this debt and deficit problem, we're turning into Venezuela. Is that what you're suggesting? We
will move in that direction, hopefully, and I pray that we don't get that extreme. But the pound, was a reserve currency of the world. The pound survived, but they didn't survive the reserve service. I think that we should wean ourselves off, but I think the political forces are so strong. The military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industry, the whole works, the welfare state, they are not going to accept that. And then there will be, I fear that the consequence of this situation is actually, violence. So we have to start winning, and that's why I give credit to what Musk and the others are trying to do is wean ourselves off. But I'm not all that optimistic that said the people will accept this, because what if the people say, Stuart, how are they going to stop the automatic increase in the interest payment on a debt that's expanding rapidly? And right now it's still, and the way this usually works, it accelerates at the end.
Yes.
We're in the acceleration period right now.
Well, let's talk about this Department of Government Efficiency and what they plan to achieve. Dr. Paul, take a listen to what Vivek Ramaswamy had to say about his plan.
Thinning it down and moving it out. But yeah, move the agencies out. You should fire about 75% of the federal employee headcount. If not, immediately on day one, you could ease into that pretty quickly. Agencies that are redundant can be reorganized that shouldn't exist. Department of Education is a good example. Shut it down, send the money back. Workforce training can move to the Department of Labor, and loan collections can move to Treasury. There's just a mass opportunity for a mega reorganization and thereby downsizing of this bureaucracy. And it's a one-way ratchet because it's not like if another president comes back, they can write that back into existence by fiat. They'd actually have to go through Congress to do it.
What's your response to that, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think it's very sincere. And if it happened, it would be okay. You could work our way out of this. But I just am not. I'm not. I can't accept the fact that it'll happen. There will be too much revolutionary spirit on doing this because people will get hurt. You can't nibble away at military payments. That's not going to happen. You can't say you start cutting with the pharmaceuticals, then the little children won't have drugs. And it'll be on and on. And the emotionalism tied to that and the pain. It's sort of like telling somebody you have to have a surgery, and yet they say, well, I don't want to have the surgery. But the thing needs surgery. But this committee, I think is very sincere, and I hope they do. I hope it works. It's just that over the years I've watched it for many, many decades now of all these promises. No, get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, government is wasteful, fraudulent, and abusive. So I don't expect government ever to do that. You have to turn the government over to the people. So yes, they're talking about management, and that is very good. And they're talking about getting rid of some of the bureaucrats. But believe me, there is a powerful force that runs Washington, and those are the special interests and the lobbyists, and they really control things behind. I think that's the big problem, that the people, you might take a vote and say, oh, yeah, we like what Trump, well, we just had a vote. And they said Trump's on the right track. So, but I'm a little bit cynical. I don't think it's going to work, because I think the people who are going to be hurt by cutting spending are going to be very, very noisy, and there will be a downturn. It's like drug addiction. They know they have to be off. We should do it. You cut the drugs, and then they have a drug reaction, and it doesn't, and people can't tolerate the reaction, so they go back to drinking their alcohol or some other drug, and that's the way it is in economics. They try it, but they never get very far. And this is not the first time they tried. This is one of the most sincere, and I think they've said some very good things, because just getting rid of 25% of the bureaucrats that don't do anything. Right. But I just don't believe it's going to happen.
Well, Dr. Paul, let me show you my screen here. This is the projection of the deficit from the Congressional Budget Office going into 2034. Now, as you can see here, according to their analysis, the deficit as a percentage of GDP is expected to remain above -6% into the next decade. Dr. Paul, here are their outlays projected. Mandatory includes security, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Discretionary includes everything else, including defense. Which of these things would you cut, or how would you increase revenues from the government in order to balance the budget?
Not interested in giving more revenue to the government. I mean, that's our problem. So I would support any cut at all, because from a libertarian viewpoint, the government is way out of control. From a constitutional viewpoint, it's way out of control. From a moral viewpoint, it's all out of control. So I like the idea of a model that the founders gave us, and nobody pays much attention to. Every member of Congress takes an oath of office. If they ever read the oath they take, we would have none of these problems, because nobody could do anything outside of Washington that wasn't explicitly authorized to do. So all of a sudden you'd have 80% of the government stopped, but we can't even stop 3% of the government. You know, they sometimes have just trying to make a point. A member would come up and say, now we have this bill here, we're going to cut 1% off it. They can't even pass that. Because they're not going to reduce it, because it's too easy to take the drug, and then they feel better. You get if you're an addict, you get the drug, you feel a lot better, but the patient finally dies.
Well, this is the issue. I mean, nobody wants their department to be cut in any way. But if you were just to look at the mandatory spending outlays, rather, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, President Trump already said he doesn't want to cut Medicare. Is there anything else that you would recommend that we, reduce in order of priority?
Well, no, if you start reducing it, then I think you just pointed out the real point. The big things that are not going to cut, whether it's the interest rates, whether it's the DOD, or whether it's Medicare or Medicaid, they're not going to be cut. I mean, every campaign, even the last one, you can't vote for the Republicans because they might cut Social Security. And all those things are huge. Yep. And where does the government? They should always ask the politicians, president, where are you going to get the money? Oh, do you have the money in the bank? Do you have it in your checking account? Like if you go buy a car, you have to have the money. No, you have to borrow. They go back to say, where's the money? They say, we'll borrow it. Well, nobody's going to loan the government that much money. I think the Fed will help us. It goes back to the Fed. Fed is the backbones of this whole system, because it wouldn't be this size if you didn't have a reserve currency of the world that's doing still better than it deserves. And as long as they're privy to this, there's a lot of people invested in the dollars. The world runs on the dollar, so they're going to. So it's the economic laws they should be convinced of, and the economic law said that this bubble can't just keep getting bigger without bursting.
I'd like to, for the last segment of our conversation, have you respond to President Trump's trade policies. Take a listen to his recent interview with NBC.
Into one of your signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe
Can
it.
you